All right, in this video, we're going to go over the relative strength stock screener and some of the different ways to use relative strength. All right, so the first, when you first log in, this is generally what the default setting, what it's going to look like. So we're going to go over all the different ways to use it in functionality. First thing is, just starting out, I would always kind of start with the RS 1 year. This is the standard way relative strength has been used, and it's how William O'Neill talks about it in How to Make Money with Stocks, how IBD has kind of done it for decades. And it's generally, when we refer to relative strength, most of the time they're using the RS 1 year. And now, primary time frame, you're basically just saying, hey, based on that time frame, I just want to look at all the stocks with whatever RS you select. So, we talk about in the article, William O'Neill uses 80 as kind of his base benchmark. He wants to look at 80 and above. Minervini will say for select circumstances, the lowest he'll go is 70. So let's put that here. We put 80. We're looking at primary time frame across 1 year, and that's what it basically shows down here. And you could sort it by time frame. The results, the matches, will be the same, but you can sort it to kind of see the results by time frame, like the 1 month, the 1 year, the 6 month, however you want. Now, I've said this in many other videos and articles. The universe, our back end is looking at 15,000 different stocks that we have kind of in our database, but this is slimming it down to 3,300 stocks because I've already filtered out penny stocks and OTC. I didn't want them included in here. We got rid of any stock that's less than $5 in price, that is less than 100 million in market cap, and anything that's less than 100,000 average volume over the last 30-day period. So we're basically now rating in our RS rating against the benchmark. All the stocks are getting rated against the benchmarks, the S&P 500, and these 3,336 stocks. And so that's what we get here. And that's, generic. That's your basic filter for running relative strength. Now, more modern momentum traders, Dan Zanger, looking at Christian Kwalamagi, they'll look at maybe shorter time frames like 1 month, 3 months, 6 month. And you can do that here. Just switch your rank by, go to 6 month, or rank by, go to 3 month. And, you'll see like MXL has been a big name that's had a lot of momentum recently. You can then go down to even the 1 month. And you can change your minimum RS. Say you want this higher and you want it to be 90. And it'll show everything from a 1 month with a 90 and above. All right, so that's basically, so we got our standard 1 year, and we have kind of our shorter time frames looking at 1 month, 3 month, and 6 month. You can also look at all time frames, and this will kind of show you whatever your rating is across from the 1 week to the 1 year. Say you don't want to include the 1 week or the 1 month, but you want 3, 6, and 1 year. Go to here, click filters, go to advanced filters, multiple time frames. You can select the time frames you want to include and set your minimum thresholds. So say we're going to set 80, and it'll show you there's 119 out of these 3,300 that had an 80 or higher across the 1 month, 3 month, 6 month, and 1 year. Okay, and then you can of course sort it, by whatever time frame you want. And so that's using multiple time frames. You can mix this up however you would like. You can also you can set your minimum kind of thresholds here for different time frames or just one time frame. All right, so the next thing we're going to discuss is, I talked about accelerating. Let me make sure I clear this out. So you can look at, I want to see everything that's accelerating from, poor to much stronger now. And you can kind of change the RS gap that you would like to set. You can determine how strict you want it. You can just go off of the primary time frame. So there's a lot of different ways that you can play around with accelerating. The bottom line is you're using this to kind of see from older time frames to more present what's accelerating, what's improving, what's getting better. And you can do the same thing with decelerating. Now, with decelerating, we're basically looking at, there's two things that it's telling us, and I talked about this in the article. Deceleration on the closer time frames like the 1 week, 1 month isn't always bad. Sometimes that's just showing us a pullback. It's showing us our big names on the 1 year, 6 month, even 3 month that have maybe temporarily weakened, which could show you a nice pullback, a good opportunity to get into the name. But it also shows us what's breaking down. So we'll set the rank by kind of further back to the 1 year or maybe 6 month, and set your minimum RS for that period here. And then on decelerating, it's going to show us what's weakening. Okay, and again, you can sort the deceleration by the RS gap or the primary time frame. Okay. That pretty much covers all the functionality that we're using with relative strength. Really the other filters we already talked about, setting the min max and the multi time frame and playing around with that. So the next thing is, a lot of people ask me, how do I slim down the list? So I'm looking at a relative strength of, say, 80 on the 1 year, and I'm just looking at that time frame. And, I have 600 names. Now, how do I slim down those 600 names besides just looking at the strongest RS? That's where I'm adding, and I talk about it in the article, my can slim kind of criteria or my growth stock fundamentals. And I'm layering on, characteristics of the biggest winning stocks in history to kind of, improve the odds that these names, it's going to sustain, that it's not just a temporary, strength name. And so the easiest way to do this, especially if you're new, I already have a preset filter. I have some preset scans that I've, run when I used to use Market Surge, and before that it was Market Smith. And I basically have those built in here. So like a leader's can slim, very much like a William O'Neill screen. And you can layer that on top of your RS. So now, look at the difference here. We had 658 names with an 80 RS on the 1 year primary time frame. We throw in some earnings and sales, and within 15% of a 52-week high, and look what it does. It brings us down to 67 names. LQDA has been a name that's been showing up there for a while, and you can click the chart, kind of review it, all that stuff. And so that's probably the first thing I would do, kind of trying to slim down the list. Also, right here, you notice this is our general template. We have price, the name, the ticker, the RS timeframes, and the performance. I like to use, and you can create these. You can select and then save and set a default. What else you want to see in your scans, and it'll show that on all the different scans you run. So I have kind of my template. I like to see, my earnings, my sales, pre-tax margins, and ROE, right? I also like to see the industry group RS, like what industry, is the industry group it's in performing. I want to see the MTS score. The MTS score is taking all this stuff and rating all the stocks, very similar to the composite score that IBD has. So I'm looking at relative strength, earnings, sales, margins, ROE. I'm looking at the industry group and the proximity to new highs, right? And then sometimes I hide this, sometimes I include it. I want to see the industry group. And so this is how I run all my screens, because that's what I like to look at. I also want to get a glance of the quarterly fundamentals, the fund ownership, and I'll sometimes include the leaders can slim checklist. And so as I run my screen, I'm able to then start at the top and click the chart. You can click the ticker or just show chart, and I can kind of just hit my space bar or the down arrows or up arrow to go back. And I can look on the right-hand side, and it's going to show me right here. Am I seeing, and you can see with LQDA that we have a clear acceleration in earnings. We have an acceleration in sales, and we have good estimates. We also have our funds, ownership is increasing kind of quarter over quarter. right? And it meets this general kind of CAN-SLIM checklist. This is a more strict checklist, and it'll tell you what you're missing. Like, we don't have 3 years of EPS growth of 25%, but it's got everything else. So we can kind of look at that as well. And so as I'm running scans, again, I'm looking for this, and then I might change up the scan and want to see, okay, I already know I'm running a 1-year RS with my CAN-SLIM, leaders growth screen. I want to see what did well last week. So you can just sort it, Atex, Frog, kind of list them all. You can kind of go through your names there. And now I also have some other you can layer multiple screens. So one, you can look at that, and you can look at your watch list. So for example, you can put, I want to run that on my watch list. And you can kind of scroll down. I'll show you the names in your watch list that meet that scan criteria. Another thing you can do is save. So you can create your own screens, just like you can in Market Surge with IBD, and save them. So this one is MTS score of 95 plus, and you can layer that with the leader CAN-SLIM, or you could just have it by itself. So let's see here, MTS score of 95, and you can kind of see everything with an MTS score of 95. And what else? Let's reset this. I have some other precepts, like this one's a big earnings, just big sales screen, and you can kind of see that. This is my super performer screen. If you're ever curious of what's in there, this is very similar to what Minervini talks about in his book and his Master Trader program. You can kind of just click Show Filters, and it'll show you it has like a trend template in there. It has kind of the fundamentals and whatnot. So these are just, other things I look at on top of relative strength. So I'm kind of layering all these other screens with relative strength. Now, if you have your own idea of different things you want to play with, just kind of go into advanced filters, show filters, and you can add some, volatility. You want high ADR percentage or ATR percentage, or you want to look for RVol, big relative volume on different time periods. You want to kind of add your own fundamental metrics in there. A lot of times too, I'll have bigger earnings, big sales, and there'll be 100 stocks. So then I start to slim down the list more by adding ROE and pre-tax margins in there. So you can do that as well. Here's all the different proprietary like MTS filters, very similar to IBD's, EPS rating, my MTS score, quality score that looks at sales, but also, profitability and whatnot. So you can also put your minimum growth percentage change for fund ownership. That's down here on the bottom right on one of those panels. So you can make sure that, fund ownership is increasing. You can also add these check boxes, and it'll say how many quarters in a row are funds increasing. Also here, William O'Neill talks about, a lot of his biggest winning stocks had at least a 17% ROE and or good pre-tax margin. So if you set here, say 15 on the other growth fundamentals section, it's basically saying if ROE is less than 15%, it'll then look at, do we have margins at whatever percent you set. So that's kind of another thing to kind of add in there. Also, you can look at, stocks that are gapping up, just general performance ranges. You can set your own market cap in here. Another thing is you can exclude or include different sectors and industry groups. So, for example, if there's certain industry groups you only want to run your screen on, you can put include and check the boxes, or exclude, and you can exclude certain industry groups you don't want to trade. And you can set the minimum for the industry group. So anything So maybe a stock has a 80 RS, but it's in a weak industry group. You can weed it out that way. So as you can tell, the list goes on. There's plenty in here for beginners and experienced traders to be looking at relative strength, but also all those characteristics of the biggest winning stocks, at least over the last 100 years that have been studied. So the last thing I'll kind of show you real quick is, let's kind of clear all this out, is you can click the industry groups here. Now this is showing, just like IBD ranks industry groups from 1 to whatever, we have 146 groups that stocks are in, and this is kind of a blended rating looking at multiple time frames, right? Just like IBD. And so you can click into, for example, you can click, biotech's been doing well. We can click, there's 260 stocks in biotech. You can click on biotech, and then you can even run an RS screen or a leader CanSlim screen on top of that. So now we're only looking, at biotech. You can see here on the right, they're all biotech. And we have the leader CanSlim preset with, our general relative strength screen. And it's kind of showing all that. And then you can just sort it. So last week, here's some of the strongest biotech names that kind of meet that criteria. All right, and you can kind of do the same. I want to clear this out and make sure I'm not. You can do the same thing. I want to run, big earnings, big sales. Then I want to look at semis, even though it's been weakening over the last month. And you can kind of look at the same thing here. So it's the same thing with sectors as well. So if you don't want to, you want to look at sectors, like health services group is the leading sector right now. It'll show you all the names within that sector, sort it however you want, or, layer on your own, run your own relative strength screen. So I want to see a minimum of maybe 80, and it'll slim down kind of the name there, or slim down the list, the matches. And you can see here matches, down to 37. Let's go to 90. Gives you 1. So, that's because it's at 99. All right, there you go. You got 25 matches. So, you can dive into those strong industry groups and sectors as well. All right, that's all I got for right now. If you have any questions, please let me know.